Everyone, welcome to this Davinsky.com. Today we have a live and a controversial debate. Today's topic is about arguments for or against the formation of ethnostates. All views and opinions expressed by all participants, including myself, are strictly for entertainment purposes and or may not be reflective of our true thoughts. Arguing in favor of ethnostates, we have Davinsky and Sammy. Arguing against ethnostates, we have X and Sun God. So without further ado, let's commence. Each participant will now have 1 to 5 minutes to lay out their introduction. First up will be Sun God, followed by Davinsky, followed by Xavier, followed by Sammy. Sun God, you have the floor.
All right. So I didn't make too much. I didn't write like anything that serious, but I'm gonna lead off with this. For one, the formation of an ethno-state is that of the ideology of neo-Nazi and Nazism and fascism. And for second, the formation of an ethno-state would require that of genocide, displacement, and murder, all that fun stuff. And lastly, the formation of the whole rhetoric of wanting an ethno state is of the supposition that those who are not of the same color as you are not truly American or British or European of culturally. And I take also it's the paradox and the structure of what we call whiteness. Whiteness is very I think I said a while back that whiteness is not a race, it's more devoid of race, as it's built arbitrarily. Many people would see, look at Russia and the Slavic nations, they're a white ethno state, but if you see that they're not, they have many different types of people and different languages and culture. Many people will look to Japan, but Japan has many different races, despite not putting them on the census, because then that would mean that they'd have to probably deal with their past. Japan has Ainu people, they have the Yamato people, the Okinawans, all sorts of people that have different cultures and are ethnically different races. This goes to show that it's more of a social construct. You would look anywhere that says that are beacons of ethno state. If you were to look at Sweden or Norway, they have a huge the people who have those ideologies are, like I said, neo-Nazi, and they're anti-Semitic, meaning that they hate Jews there as well. If you want to see how an ethno-state would be worked in practice, I'd say look at Israel and Palestine and what they're doing to them. They are doing a genocide. This ethno-state talk, it's not optimal, and I feel quite disingenuous and racist. That's my stance.
Okay, so I will take the floor. Can you guys hear me? You can hear me okay, everyone?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
So my arguments are going to concentrate on the economy and in-group preference because there's just so much to cover. Sammy's going to cover the cultural aspect. So we often hear that we need immigration for the economy. The idea is simple. The more people in a nation, the more people spending within that nation, the larger the economy grows. But what they miss is that a larger GDP does not cause a better standard of life for the average citizen. This is why the Human Development Index doesn't even consider GDP as a metric for development. What is far more important and tends to correlate strongly with life metrics is GDP per capita used by the UN and also gross national income per capita, which was developed by the World Bank, as it takes into account remittance, which can account for 30 to 40% of the total GDP for countries like Tonga, Somalia, Lebanon, according to the World Bank 2020. Let me show you with a few examples how a larger economy is a horrible metric for quality of life. India fluctuates between 5th and 7th largest economy in the world, although they have a GDP per capita of only $2,000 per year and a GNI per capita of only $7,000 per year. Personally, I find it unethical for them to be siphoning money out of the Western world, but this relates to in-group preference, which I'll cover later. The question remains, would you rather live in the 5th largest economy in the world or Sweden, which is 20 places below India? This is a no-brainer. Sweden's GDP per capita is $50,000 a year more than India, and the GNI per capita is $50,000 a year or more as well. Sweden ranks 7th out of 189 countries with Human Development Index. India ranks 131 out of 189 countries for human development. So we need to put this meme to rest that we need billions of non-whites to come to the Western world for the economy, because that shit just doesn't make sense. Also, I'm an environmentalist, and it's simple. The more people you have in a nation, the worse off that nation's environment becomes, as there's more people driving cars, using up finite natural resources, etc. If you're an environmentalist, you should be against immigration. One last point is in-group preference. This is an established psychological fact. University of Toronto professor Lee stated that babies as young as 6 to 9 months already have positive bias towards faces of their own race and negative biases against faces of other races. The recent study published in Developmental Science, Lee showed babies associated faces of their own race with happy music and faces of other races with sad music. Unfortunately, this continues into adulthood. According to the Institute of Research on Labor and Employment, March 2009, published by Berkeley, we find a general pattern of race bias across all outcomes in that employees usually have better outcomes when they are of the same race as their manager. From page 14, results for the promotion section, black managers have the highest in-group preference. We see black managers promote employees at a higher rate on average, mainly because they promote black employees at a higher rate. From the conclusions, page 27, dismissals and promotions are managerial decisions, and in both we find a similar pattern. On one hand, we find evidence of managerial bias in that black, Hispanic, and Asian employees are relatively less likely to be dismissed and more likely to be promoted when their manager is of the same race. It is clear that people have a racial bias, and unless you condition that race to hate itself, such as the case for white liberals, who showed greater outgroup preference indicated by an ANES 2018 pilot study, white liberals were the only group who preferred other races over themselves. This is enough to justify closing off immigration to the Western world from non-whites. Why should we give up our natural advantages that stem from in-group preference and demographic majority and place ourselves at the whim of people who prefer their own race over ours? We must retain our demographic majority. Thank you.
Right. Well, this one might go a little bit long, so it'd be cool if someone would let me know when I approach 5 minutes. Can everyone hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay, cool. All right, so to start this off, I'd like to let everybody know that there is a difference in a formation of an ethno-state on the basis of morality or practicality. So morally, an ethno-state is not necessarily immoral if you are maintaining your demographics. So like I can give an example. So let's say Croatia is 90% Croatian as of now. Well, maintaining this wouldn't be necessarily immoral because it is maintaining the demographics, and all you need to do is just restrict immigration, right? But it would be immoral if you are altering your demographics. So America is an example of a nation that would require alteration of demographics to achieve an ethno-state. So alteration is usually immoral because it usually accompanies things like forced deportation of people, the harassment of people, or pressuring until the desired minority population flees or exits the nation due to discriminatory practices on behalf of race or ethnicity. So these things are moral due to the disregard of human rights, and these are accepted things, the disregard of accepted human rights. And then there are also precedents of basically pressures that try to force, ethno-states in the forms of a culture or, I guess I would say, like race or ethnicity. So to give an example of one of these precedents, so basically like you give the example of like the Islamic tax on Jews or non-Muslims, right? So basically the point of this is to pressure or I guess like make or force people to either concede or leave. The USSR's forced expulsion of the English and Chechens, right? This is also an example of ethnic cleansing or deportation based off the premise of ethnicity. The Rwanda genocide of the Tutsis is basically the genocide of a unwanted minority in a state. So ethnostates generally lead to the creation of mass human rights violations if you are altering demographics. That being said, maintaining a set of demographics, for instance, Japan, is not inherently more immoral. Rather, I would say it's practically incompetent. So Japan currently, to give it an example, is an ethnostate, and currently they have a looming demographic crisis, with its birth rate generally declining yearly. So in 2020, Japan's birth rate was the lowest it has been since 1899. So this causes problems, such as an aging population, declining workforce, and a lack of a replacement generation. But these problems in and of themselves create a motley of issues such as a declining economy and GDP per capita, longer risk of viral infections, and basically, if so, something like COVID, for instance. Okay, if you have an aging population, it's more likely to kill more people. So, and also a less productive workforce. So, for this last point specifically, Japan's productivity in 2017 was $46.2 in GDP for every hour worked, in relation to the OECD average of $60.2 per hour. So it's much lower than the rest of the world, basically. Not the rest of the world, but the rest of those specific countries. The difference between an ethnostate by deliberate, there's the difference in an ethnostate by deliberate maintenance or just basically like intrinsic existence. So like, you could give South Korea for an example, deliberate maintenance of a ethnostate, right? And then for just intrinsic reality, you could give, I could say, probably Serbia, right? They don't actually put any deliberate maintenance on their demographics, or like more people don't immigrate there. So basically, the more emphasis you put on maintaining your demographics, the more it is deliberate. So I could give China for this example. And China is 92% Han Chinese as of now, right? So this could be classified as a state, maybe. But the difference is that they don't really put emphasis on this, right? So in 2019, China accepted 303,410 refugees, and basically they're opening their country up more to immigrants. Whereas Japan, in 5 years from 2015 to 2020, they allowed a total of 51 refugees. So it's clear that Japan will put more emphasis on their demographics, right? And this basically shows that there's a difference between deliberately creating an ethnostate or just one by existence, right? So China would be an example of one that just is, right? They don't necessarily maintain it. And then I would like to say that
You have like 25 seconds left.
Okay, well then that's it. Then I'll say there's my points later on.
Can I just make a comment on something real quick? Would anyone mind that? All right. Another thing that I looked into Japan that I've heard, another reason why Japan has an aging population and they don't have they don't have as many like people aren't having as many children in Japan is mainly because of their high-paced capitalistic society, and also because a lot of their younger population is moving out to other countries, and that's just one of the reasons. And also there's like the way that they like have their relationships, and or the way that they create the way that they like are able to their whole like cultural way of dating and stuff like that, it kind of conflicts with their current economy, and so they spend a lot of time at school and a lot of time at work, and that takes away from their social life, and that prevents them from creating families or even having the opportunity or wanting to do that, because they're encouraged to get a career before anything else. And also there are a lot more women in the workforce, or a lot of women in Japan are encouraged to go into the workforce. So I just wanted to put that in there. Also about China, we do know that China does discriminate against certain groups of people because they were putting Muslims into a certain population of Muslims into a concentration camps. So I just wanted to mention that. So despite them bringing those people in or allowing them whatever, they do not treat them very well. So I don't think people would want to come in. So even if they're allowing them in, I'm just saying, putting that out there.
Okay, so
right.
Sammy, you're the last man, and then we'll go into general discussion.
All right. Well, my name is Sammy. I'm not a professional debater, and I didn't really write an intro, so I'm gonna give the best I can. So my position is for ethno states, and even though the idea of ethno states is very controversial, it's to me it's not very controversial at all, and by a fact-based basis, it's not strange at all. It's not controversial at all. Most countries today would still be considered an ethno state if you simply applied it to a non-white population. Ethno state itself is more of a racial term towards white people than anything else, and it is every country's right to preserve their majority group or that has the most historical ties to their particular land or who is the creator of the most modern state. The idea that you cannot do that at the expense of another people, and I'm not talking about violently, but I'm talking about just look out for the majority interest and create a common culture based on the criteria I stated, is ludicrous because almost every country does it. China, one of the oldest society, is vehemently pro-Chinese and looks out majority for Han-Chinese people. Japan is all Japanese, looks out only for Japanese people. Saudi Arabia, all Arab, just about. If you want to open a business in Saudi Arabia or any Arab country, you need to have a partnership from an Arab person to do that. So these are just examples. Oh, Denmark and Scandinavia, Europe. Europe is a native white homeland, which does not get discussed anytime cultural context is brought up. These ideas are very powerful, and the reason people are against ethno states is because A, they are racist, B, they do not care about the reality that people do get along better with their own race, and C, they just don't want to give credit to the fact that ethno states work when it is a majority of people with a united tradition, such as in Spain, where they have 90%, it's like 95% Spaniard. That's a rough estimate, but it is around that population. And they have very low crime rates, even that in the past that was not so. And they know who they are, and it is there's no conflict. There's no ethnic conflict besides regions that had prior kingdoms in the past, but they're not actively killing each other or saying that they're lesser. It's more of a political debate of their own ancestral homelands within a region. So most people, in general, I'm trying to prove that most people get along better. Ethno states are just and are a reality in many countries, and that culturally the idea of race is also a fact, that race is something you cannot change, and it is not a social construct the way people believe past a certain point. That's the end of my introduction.
Cool. So we'll jump into general discussion now.
Yeah,
So
right.
I want to address Sun God quickly. So I wrote down a few points, and then we can switch around. So firstly, Sun God, white is just as valid as any ancestral grouping. Race is extremely broad. It includes ethnicity, ancestry. It's used interchangeably in academia all the time. So what you want to draw a line around and say, oh, that's white, or that's black, or that's Asian, or that's East Asian, it's somewhat arbitrary, but it has got some use in terms of being a proxy for ancestral groupings. So I just wanted to make that point. Xavier, you've kind of made the point. You've justified having a demographic majority because you talked about all of these internal displacements and of groups. So you mentioned the Chechens under Stalin being deported. If the Chechens had demographic majority of Russia, they wouldn't have been deported. So we can't put ourselves at the whims of a larger group. We've got to retain that. And also, you said China isn't an ethno state, dude. You have to look at the Uyghur people. So if you look at Xinjiang province, for instance, that used to be majority Uyghur, and then there was a policy of force, like there was a migration. So they encouraged Han people to move into this area, and now it's something like 80% Han when it was previously Uyghur. And you're talking about how many did you say? 400,000 refugees, but per capita, okay, that's a lot less. They've got over 1 billion people. So it may seem like a crazy number, but that's just going to be absorbed into the population, and they're just going to look Chinese. It's just such a small number. Also, Japan. Okay, so you can address some of those points.
Well, you can continue. I just want to ask you, per capita. So Japan had 51 in 5 years. China had 300,000 in 1 year. Do you think per capita, would you seriously say Japan takes more?
How many did you say China had?
300,000 in 1 year, whereas Japan took in 51 over a span of 5.
No, I'm not comparing Japan and China. I'm comparing China to the West, right?
Well, sure, but I'm not. The West is already increasingly a melting pot. So if you want to talk about ethno states, it'd be more. It would make more sense to compare them to other East Asian countries.
You can still have an ethno state which has a large minority population. As soon as you have racial demographics in terms of immigration, that's an ethno state. So we could start a policy tomorrow saying that no more non-white immigration into the US. That would be an ethno state. It wouldn't displace the current people there. It would just have a policy of retaining that demographic majority. And also what you said about Japan is like, it's just such a bad meme. We need more people for the economy, more people to spend, continual growth. People, like, populations meet in equilibrium. This continual population growth is completely unnatural and unsustainable for the environment. It's just such a bad meme. And he's saying that, like, or maybe it's like not the fact that Japan's pushing to be an ethno status. People don't want to move there. Are you telling me that a fucking Somali dude doesn't want to move to Japan, where the standard of life is 1 billion times better? That is a joke, and you know it.
Can I
just real quick? Yeah. So you're saying it's not natural, but so I can give South Korea for instance. Okay, South Korea as of now has 16.5% of its population is elderly. Okay, but by the year 2067, it's reported to be, I think, 46.5%. This is not natural, as you're saying. It's due to a deliberate maintenance of demographics, and they're restricting immigration. Immigrants, it's already known to.
Can I make a? I want to make a.
Populations go up and down all the time.
I think that the issue in a lot of these Asian countries that are being mentioned is they put a high they encourage educate. They have a very high priority on education and work, right? So there's very little time for social life. There's very little time to actually the important aspects of being able to start a family, or there's no encouragement of that necessarily in their society. There's encouragement for achieving higher and higher levels of education and what do you call it?
All right.
Yeah.
What I do is I want to counteract what most of these people are saying. All right. One, Japan, they like to call themselves an ethno state. They aren't. Like they have a rich, diverse culture. They just put the census as Japanese or immigrant. Number two, like I said, the issue with this is that you are framing when you say, oh, it's good for the economy. Come on, you got to brush that garbage off. The issue is, I would say, the economic system and how it's structured. Many more immigrants don't mean like you lose your job. The reason why getting a job is hard is because the system requires for it. The system requires like there to be a mass unemployment so that the wages can stay the same, and the owner class has top pickings of who works. Number two, in terms of retention of the ethno state and like in group preference, like Davinsky said, there are some studies that show that those who interact with people of different races become less racist. Like they become less hateful, and that's just due to their mind opening up. Many people are segregated mind you. These notions of how people perceive other races are due to segregation. There's most white towns are white. Most towns, black towns, are black. That's just the truth. And if you even take places like London, there are segregated parts of the city. You have a really white part, and then you have a really more ethnically diverse part.
Hold on. I wanted to go first. I asked first. When you say segregated, they're not forced. There's not forced segregation. Those people have chose to. People from black communities don't want to move into predominantly white communities, and people from white communities don't want to move into predominantly black communities. No one's forcing them to do that. You can move anywhere you'd like, and you see in a lot of different communities in America, even predominantly white communities, there are small populations of other races that live there. So the opportunity for you to move out of one area to another area where there's other people is an option in America. America is a very diverse country, but a lot of those groups end up being going to more how do you put it, concentrated areas of their own people, but that's more of their personal choice. It's not a force. They're not forced to do that.
Can I just make one last point on this in-group preference? Because you said that our racism stems from not having exposure, but there's also a study, I should have brought it into this debate, which showed that so managers from diverse areas, they're still more likely to hire members of their own race, even if their own race are disproportionately less common there than the other race. So that's one point that kind of counters that. And you said Japan being 3% non-ethnically Japanese is a diverse place. So you could make that argument for Poland or these European countries that are pretty homogenous. It's like, oh, you know, these Western Poles are slightly different from these Southern Poles. We don't need immigration. We're diverse enough. I love that. We should do that, Sungord. I agree with you.
I also want to jump in a couple things he's been saying as well. So, I mean, all right,
you're like, this place has, so then that would break the issue, that it's not an ethnicity. Those people who see the other races, they are extremely discriminated against. The Okinawans, the Ainu people. If you take a look at the Uyghurs, if you take a look at other Jewish people in most upper northern Europe, their lives are worse because of these ideological sentiments that we're breeding.
Because they're a minority. Because they're a minority.
I also want to say one thing though. Actually, go on with your point. You didn't finish your point. Go on.
The idea that people are happier because they don't see other people of their race is absolutely garbage. Because, like I said, we live in a polarizing world. The reason why it's you were talking about how people don't want to move into other places with different races. No, it's that they can't. Why do you think things are super segregated as they are now? Because most. I want to
interrupt that real quick. What is
the economic of the economic social mobility? All right, redlining, the furious segregation, the black codes. They've been here. They helped build the foundation. When black people were freed from slavery, they were not given like land and stuff to start on their own, and many of them ended up in jail because they still needed slave labor. This isn't something that we can just brush aside as
and I'd like to add something.
Can I?
Yeah, this is.
I want to I would really like to counter this because
hang on, guys. Hang on. I want Sammy to say something because Sammy hasn't spoken yet. So Sammy, you have the floor.
All right. So every argument you're making is more for an ethno state than anything. And I think everyone needs to take out the idea of ethno state as being just a white thing because it's not. By definition, most countries that you're referencing, just like Davinsky said, are diverse within their own race. But the reasons they are having this ethnic strife is because these people are not assimilating. Wait, hold on. They are not assimilating into the major culture. If you have a foreign population that is not assimilating, you're going to have some type of friction. Secondly, I would say that discrimination in the modern sense and racism in the modern sense, unless you're saying someone is not superior or you're attributing something negative, violently negative against someone because of their race, or discrimination in that regard because of their race, like saying someone is dumb only because they're black, which we know is not true. We know genetic racism is not true anymore. It's all about culture, how you grow up. So unless you're doing that, discrimination just means judgment per the definition. If you chose what you ate this morning, if you chose a bowl of oatmeal over having an apple, that is discrimination just as much as it is choosing, hey, I like this black guy over here, but he doesn't share my culture, so we can be friends, but I would like to marry someone of my own race. That is a form of discrimination, but it's not bad discrimination. You have the right to do that. That is a natural right that all humans hold intrinsically. And rights of others do not come at the expense of someone else. This is in the Constitution. Freedom of someone else's culture or it does not come at the detriment of one another. In the past, this hasn't happened because humans are imperfect, but for the most part, the rule is that people should be people stick to their own, and people shouldn't I kind of got lost there, but for the most part, people stick to their own, and in the modern world, we're not doing these negative behaviors we've done in the past. By a large extent, there's been a lot of progress. So I just want to say that.
I want to make another. I want to make another statement though. So when you claim that there's financial divide in America, right, between races, are you saying that all black people are poor and do not have the ability to move out of their communities? Or are you saying that all anybody of any other races they are like, for example, what about Asian populations? A lot of them choose to be in mostly Asian communities. That's why you have like places like Cupertino, which are mostly Asian. Those are not poor people. Those are people who want to be around people that they culturally align with.
All right, hold on. Hold the back up. All right. So one, I'm not saying all black people are poor. All right. Yeah, that's just silly. First things first, I want to go to what the other dude was saying was that he's making it very simple on a huge sociological issue. Racism is not I judge you. No, it's way more complex and way more structured, and it's silly. It's a silly notion to try to simplify it as one having a different preference, as if it's ice cream.
I'm sorry.
Get your head out of your ass. The one thing of what race is, and I think that comes from maybe more so a sign of privilege than actual anything. Racism is not just a judgment. It is more so a system based on ideological warfare. This is.
I'd like to give a point though, because do you guys mind if I go after you? Okay.
Now to say,
you can go.
1 second. Just after this, there's a function here you can raise your hand. So I just raised my hand, and I think that will be easier. So Xavier, and then I'll go after you.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'd like to. We're kind of getting away from the larger argument against ethno states, right? We're talking about economic divides and all these sorts of things in countries that are already, not ethno states. America's not an ethno state, so it wouldn't be very competent to talk about it. So I'd like to move us, if you guys don't mind, kind of back towards the argument of whether or not we should do ethno states, whether they're practically viable, whether you should do them, are they good for the economy, stuff like that. So, and I'd like to kind of piggyback off of a point that Sammy said. So he said, why don't we talk about countries that are non-white and are also ethno states? So if you guys don't mind, I'd like to give a point that actually kind of pertains to that. So another point that I'd like to give is that ethno states have a higher rate of suicide. So Lesotho in Africa is the country with the highest suicide per capita in the world, 77.2 per 100,000. Eswatini or Swaziland in Africa, 42. Lesotho in Africa, near South Africa. Number 2 is Eswatini or Swaziland, Africa, 40.3 per 100,000. 3 is South Korea, Asia, 28.6 per 100,000. 4 is Kiribati, an island in Oceania, 28.3 per 100,000. So what do these 4 nations have in common? Continent? not longitude, not latitude, poverty, anything like that.
I
Before
want
I finish. So these four nations have one thing in common: ethnic homogeneity. Okay, nothing else.
so
So these four countries with the top, the suicide rates per capita, all are ethno states.
I want to make a mention. First of all, how are you directly? Where do you find that those two things have a direct tie? Maybe it's because
that's
of
cool.
maybe it is because the economic state of those countries. Maybe it's because they're lacking resources, and so they really see nowhere else to go. I don't see how a correlation of having a bunch of your people around you makes you be like, oh, I want to off myself. I would see that if I am not able to provide myself food, shelter, or my government is absolute garbo, then yeah, I would want to kill myself, right? Maybe if I can't make a life there, yes, I would want to kill myself. Not if there's a bunch of people that are, the
South
same race
Africa.
as you.
Hang on.
Well,
So me, and then Sun God, and then Sammy.
Well, he responded straight to my point though. So if you guys talk, it's gonna be the way. Okay, so he said, where am I getting this correlation from? I wouldn't just say it if it wasn't causally. PNAS.
Repeat yourself. You lagging. Repeat yourself.
Between these two things, you can look up on pnas.org. You can look it up. There is a direct causal link between So I'll read this off. Having more individuals of the same group or physical problems decreases individual risk in the United States, but having social similarity for natives, however, increases suicide risk. So you can look that up if you'd like, but there is a link. It's not just like a corollary thing.
Okay, well, I want to go into the point about, you said that it's not as unethical to maintain an ethno state compared to forcing an ethno state. So I just want to clarify definitions. So my definition of an ethno state is any state that has a policy based on race. So you could make the US an ethno state. You could be like, no more non-white immigration. The people that are already here can stay. So that's maintaining it. It's not removing people. And I don't see how minorities that are already in the USA would have a problem with that, because they're already going to have citizenship. They're already in the country. And the people outside of the US have no moral right to come to the US. So I don't see any issue with currently just cutting off, saying no more non-white immigration into the Western world.
To bounce off that, so, okay, so one, holy Jesus, South Africa is not an ethno state. For one, it's got many different types of races and ethnicities, and like I said, this is all broadly, like Davinsky said, race is very broad, which is why it's a social construct. It means different things to different people. I mean, not everybody around the world will see, all right, white is this and it's black. No, it's either your Zulu, your Xhosa, your Fulu, your
I just want to say we have 10 minutes left.
That's what race means to people there. That's because race is more than just the color of your skin in some places. And bounce off on just cutting it off. If you still keep the same system intact, such as the imperialism, that's why you have immigration, because there's an unequal exchange and the first world is robbing the third world of their wealth. That's why we can fund the social democracies that Europe and all these other places thrive on. The issue is that if you cut off immigration, you still destroying, which they will, you are literally producing poverty, and you have no way of people to make a better life for themselves. This is how it's all started. Since the 1980s of the Contra and Reaganomics, people have a scapegoat, which is immigrants, because they feel like that they are a detriment to their society, which they're not. Immigrants produce the most cheap labor. Immigrants are the people who, before 9/11, they were migrant workers. They came in, worked, and then went back. Now it's much harder to get these jobs. The issue is the deteriorating system, and I don't find it optimal to blame people who have the same interests as you. Culture aside, who cares if they eat different foods, speak different languages? You have the same interests, and it's in your best interest to not like crap on these people, because that's what I feel like. This is the whole intent, and this is why I say it's very, very fast.
I have to jump in here because I've been listening.
Hang on. Okay, hang on, Sammy, you can go.
Okay, listen. So everything you're saying about immigration right now is, I mean, it's only a half truth. So, right, I've actually printed out a lot of things, particularly here in America. Yes, it is true that a lot of immigrants are good people. However, that's not the issue that most people have with immigration. The issue is mass immigration, and ethnocracy can have regulated immigration. That is a thing that was happening even under Nazi Germany. They still took in immigrants that were different even while they were getting rid of others, which is why there's still Nazi defenders to this day, because even though it was wrong, and I'm not defending it, they were still doing things that if you were kept an ethno state, it wouldn't make sense. Even though there was tons of people in concentration camps, they were still accepting people from other nations, which is highly odd. So maybe Nazi Germany is not the best state, but I'm going to get back to the point. Is that mass immigration is more of the issue. And secondly, it is not true that a lot of immigrants build tons of jobs. What they do is they are taking advantage of, because like you said, lower nations that either through means of their own corruption rather than bigger countries such as Central America, South America, Mexico, who America is claimed to have destroyed their populations or whatever, they accepted the money. It takes the population getting fed up to stop this. It cannot be stopped if no one is willing to do it in their own country. They simply would run here because it's easier. Secondly, for all the stuff that you're saying about immigrants to make the economy better is false, because in remittances here in America, $40 billion is sent home just in remittances. This isn't just the economic waste that in California, which had $100 billion alone. I mean, this is only like a tidbit. This is more. Let me pull it up here. This is more than what they say. They say undocumented immigrants. This is from saladbowlproject.org. $11.64 billion in state and local taxes. Notice it doesn't say income taxes because they don't pay all the taxes. And only 50% of these people are paying their full amounts, either because they're undocumented or simply illegal. These big businesses take advantage and they keep the wages low, depressed, because they know they could take advantage of these people while putting them in sanctuary cities like New York, Chicago, San Diego, LA, where they then are in limbo for years while they continue to bring these people in. So it's a disservice to illegals in the first place. And it is false that they're bringing more prosperity to the country. It is culture is nice. I have nothing against culture. That is a totally different argument. That is also kind of a straw man, because you're saying that ethno states are anti-cultural when that is not true. Other countries love other cultures. They import other cultures all the time by buying other cultural products. You can do that and still maintain your majority. Just like in Japan, they're highly westernized.
Can we move it over,
they
please?
still
Because you've been
their
going on for a
culture.
long time.
Okay, hang on. I want to make I want to make my point. I've been waiting for ages. So this is my closing statement. Everyone can give their closing statement, but I want to address this
We
meme
still have
about
5 minutes of open. We still have 5 minutes of open discussion.
Okay, so
I've been timing it.
my point on immigration, right, is that we can have all of the benefits of immigration without naturalizing these people and changing our demographics for the future, but we can't change back. So if you look at countries in the Gulf region, basically the Gulf was built by temporary workers from India, from Bangladesh, from East Africa, but they don't stay. They come, they work, they get skilled, they go back, they invest in their own country, and it gets better. This whole idea of like everyone that comes to the Western world has to become naturalized and stay there permanently is just so damaging. And as the Dalai Lama says, we should bring in these people, these refugees, train them, give them a safe spot, but ultimately they should return and build their own country. And that's my point on that. So
I also want to add upon that real quickly. Also something interesting. A lot of the times the reason why immigration is encouraged onto certain countries is because they say, oh, the birth rate is declining within these countries, so they need more workers. The economy is doing badly because the birth rate is dropping. Maybe we need to encourage the people of that country and make it in such a way, for example, in Denmark and in Canada and a few other European countries, they have lessened work hours. They have also lessened school time. So then they can have more time to spend with their families, more time to have a social life, which will, encourage growth within the people. And maybe we won't have dropping birth rates within those countries anymore. Also, people within those countries are encouraged not to have children because it's better for the environment and stuff like that. While people from other countries come into these countries and have children there, so then their children could be, citizens of that country or whatever, or they give them a better life, but they're still having children at very large rates. And then also in a lot of third world countries, people, I think something that would help third world countries more is if they gave them contraceptives and taught them about gave them some sex education, sex ed or whatever in those countries that would prevent these unplanned pregnancies and all that kind of stuff in those countries. So I think that would actually help those countries more, because a lot of times you see these impoverished countries and these people have nothing but have like 10 kids. I mean, that's irresponsible on their part, but maybe they don't have the education to know that they shouldn't do that. You know what I mean? I think that's also something that should be added if people actually do care about these impoverished countries.
I'd like to know if you guys don't mind, because I've been waiting for a while.
Hang on, Xavier has the floor.
All right, so earlier it sounded like someone said remittances are effectively like a hamper to, especially the U.S. economy. That's actually not true. So remittances, what they do is, since there is no like translating copying machine, these like the American USD that you send has to be sent back in forms of purchasing services or goods or something like that. So we don't lose actually any of that money. And then for two, Todd, you said something about the birth rate being due to work and like so you could drop hours. Well, then Japan's, as I said earlier, their productivity is already below the other OECD countries. Dropping birth hours would further destroy that. And then for the UAE work argument, where it's like, they don't nationalize these people. Well, did you know that Emiratis are only 10% of the UAE? So the infrastructure they have now and the cities they build now, the Emiratis can't ever, due to the population, they can't ever actually, work and fulfill the things that they've required now. So like how big the cities are, Emiratis can't do these jobs anymore. So they've effectively trapped themselves in a system where they forever need these sorts of temporary workers, and they will forever have to, as long as they want to keep the cities as big as they are, the infrastructure as good as it is. And then now onto what I was been trying to say for like a while now. So someone said earlier that like immigration, basically they don't pay enough taxes. Well, I mean, it has been found that even illegal immigrants actually do pay like a lot of money towards like fiscal,
50%,
economic.
50%.
Yeah, but they still pay
50%.
basically like their worth, right? So they don't use social services.
They don't pay all the taxes. They pay the state and what is it, buying taxes? Like when they buy something,
but
they don't
you're
pay.
Not thinking about it in a term of like, so they have as much of an impact on fiscal matters as well, though. So they give 50%, but how much do they use per? They don't.
It's actually, what you're saying is false, because what I said is remittances, all the money inside the economy that they're making, they're directly sending 40 billion more than they pay back to Mexico, and that's not even the drain that they cause.
You're making a dichotomy: more than they pay. That's not true. So you're using two numbers, and you're using them in a competitive manner.
We have a minute left of open discussion. I just want to let everyone know that.
Okay, cool.
Okay,
well,
so I'm just going to say this.
Just finish about that because you talked about it. I only talked like twice.
You're seeing a dichotomy. I'm telling you a fact. Like you're saying that they pay.
You're making competitive numbers.
So
you're the one
hang on, Sammy. Let Xavier finish his point.
All right, so there's a myth in America that immigration hurts workers. They take jobs, they drive down wages. So for one, immigrants are complementary. They don't compete with the jobs. That's not true. For two, immigrants in America are highly entrepreneurial. They launch new companies at twice the rate of Native Americans. This creates large swaths of jobs for even native-born workers. The crime, if anyone thinks like immigrants are a huge thing of crime, they're not. Even like illegal immigrants have a lower rate of convictions than native-born Americans. Regular immigrants have even less of a rate of conviction. So the crime argument doesn't work. And then I guess to finish it all off, the birth rate, Japan has a low birth rate, not due to like capitalistic ventures. I mean, Israel's also a hugely capitalistic society. They have the highest birth rate in the industrialized world, right? It's due to the fact that Japan is they put too much emphasis on basically what they want to see in demographics. So yeah, that's just all I'll say.
Okay, so I want to respond to it.
We
So-
have to.
Hang on.
We actually have to have our
respond
closing
in your-
points.
Yeah.
We actually have
respond
to
in
have
your
our
closing if you like,
points.
Sammy.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just
Alright.
going to respond, and then I'm going to close my main points here. The idea that, I mean, it's kind of here in America. I'm using an example from America because I've got all this research in front of me from Rasmussen, National Economics, Editorial Money, CNN, AOL. A lot of it is very recent. So a lot of what you're saying is it's highly, what is it? It's more opinion based because there isn't hard evidence that you can go and say, oh, well, these illegal immigrants don't cause more crime, because you don't know. You can't go around asking that, and you're not going to get good answers from those people because they're scared of being deported because they're illegal. Secondly, what you're saying is it doesn't add up, because you said illegal immigrants pay taxes. Yeah, only 50% of them actually file income taxes. So you're leaving, and this is of the 11 million that is recorded. There's another 11 million, they say is closer to 22 million in America, that they're not recording. So there's only 50% of a recorded population. By definition, they're not paying their full share because they're not supposed to be here. Secondly, the amount of money that we're getting into the economy from these taxes in America's economy is being outset by the cost of keeping these people here. In America, in California alone, National News Economic Editorial, 15 billion on education for illegal immigrants and anchor babies, healthcare for illegal immigrants, 4 billion, remittance payments, 3 billion. That's from California alone. And crimes committed by illegal immigrants, 4 billion. So this idea that there's no issue is totally false. We're paying for it in other ways, and it's not just counting like the money they send back. It's other ways on the strain on the system, that on the public education, on healthcare, on crimes that we pay out of pocket that you don't see on day to day. Secondly, it's fine if other people want to come here. This isn't an anti-immigration thing. The idea that ethno states can't import immigrants it's just more about controlled immigration and respecting the established cultures here in 2021. Third, I would like to say,
You have 20
because
seconds left.
I'm kind of putting this in here, like I'm wrapping this into my final statement, as well as like, just proving this. So ethno states, I kind of lost track. They could still have other cultures and bring other people here. It is not inherently anti-immigration or anti other race. There are many modern cultures that are considered ethno states, like Japan, South Korea, China, Saudi Arabia, Denmark,
Sammy,
Germany.
you're kind of going over your time.
Okay, well, I'm just gonna wrap up. In general, you can have ethno states without all the negatives, and illegal immigration has a lot more negatives than controlled immigration.
All right.
You guys mind if I go next? Then
Yes, you can go next. Two minutes.
Because he's responding to mine. Yeah, for sure. This will be my conclusion. So
yeah. All right.
This
2 minute conclusions.
So I got you. So basically, he said 50% or whatever. Well, if you look up Congressional Budget Office indication of illegal immigrant taxes paying, it'll show up that 50% through 75% of unauthorized immigrants pay federal, state, and local taxes. And you're making it like a kind of a dichotomy. So you're like 15 million in what would you say, like schooling? Well, yeah, but immigrants also, especially legal immigrants, they pay property taxes as well, which is what schools are funded by. And then for two, basically, you were saying something about like the economy. Well, this is not even in reference to regular immigrants, okay? This is just illegal immigrants. Illegal immigrants alone have $1.2 trillion in spending, I guess, the spending power. So that's a lot. That's not taking into reference like Asian immigrants, Middle Eastern immigrants, especially like other wealthy immigrants. And then, so basically, yeah, that's response to the arguments. And also remittances aren't bad because it comes back to the U.S. in forms of purchasing services. And I guess just to conclude, so basically immigrants, especially in America, I can't say any other country, but they're very good for the U.S. economy. They're not a zero sum because the economy is dynamic. Basically, as I said earlier, immigrants complement for native workers. They don't compete with them. Jobs are created. Let's say like an immigrant comes in, they create a business. Well, this opens up other spots or roles, right?
Not really.
And then,
Hang on, Sammy. This is final. You've said your piece.
Yeah, and then
Right.
if you take ethno states, like to me, it seems incompetent because you can take in highly educated immigrants.
You have
like
30
Brandon Drake has
seconds
never
left.
Okay, I'll figure it out. Brandon Drake has never been researched and found that's like a huge thing in other countries. So taking highly educated immigrants, they commit less crime than native peoples. They open up businesses. I mean, for instance, like Hindu Americans in America, I think they on average their income is like $140,000. So just to finish off, immigrants are not a bad thing. Ethno states aren't necessarily bad if you're maintaining, but I would say they're incompetent and impractical.
Okay, so I'll do my closing now. So this is turned into an immigration debate. I'm not against immigration. I'm against naturalization. There's a huge difference. And the fact that you said that immigrants on average commit less crime, well, obviously because they have a fear of being deported. If I commit a crime in Thailand, I'm going to be deported, so I'm less likely to commit a crime here, right? That's just
Second
on that.
well.
Okay, yeah. So second and third generation, that's where you need to look at. So to conclude, each nation has the right and obligation to its current demographic. In essence, this is a democracy. In essence, majority rules. The less white a nation becomes, the more hostile that nation becomes for white people. We should not give up our demographic majorities and place ourselves at the whims of other races and their in-group biases. This mass multiracialism is a Western experiment not reciprocated across much of the world. In Saudi Arabia, you cannot become a full citizen unless your father is Saudi. In January 2020, Deputy Prime Minister of Japan said, Japan is a nation of one race, one language, one ethnic group. If Saudi Arabia and Japan can do this, then so can we. So guys, don't forget to look up www.thedavinsky.com for more fire content, and be sure to like and comment on this video to help the algorithm. If anyone else wants to shout out their socials at the end, you may. Done.
All right. I'll go with my last statement, I guess.
Can I also make a last statement after him?
Well, I didn't get to do my last statement. So
yeah, you go ahead. You go ahead.
So I wanna generalize this off as one, this whole issue of people of this whole taxes and the remittances. Mind you, if you are against tax avoidance, it's not your fellow, workers. These people share the same class as you. It's not these immigrants. They like X said, they create jobs, they work hard, and they don't reap any of the taxable benefits, such as like healthcare and such. Because they don't vote in politicians. They do the work and they don't reap the benefits of it. They don't get the welfare like that in many places. If you are against this tax evasion, you've got to talk to Bezos. You got to talk to Warren and Buffett and the people that run this place, not your fellow man. This is an issue. Lastly, on the whole, racial demographics, these like you're acting as if Saudi Arabia containing its racial majority through like these toxic means is a good thing. It's not. In fact, they have a lot of racist sentiment. I know that you like to pull it up that the global South is more racist than the West, and now you're looking at it as a good thing. No, that's not a good thing. Lastly, the issue of ethno states is
30 seconds left.
I got you. The means to obtain it. The means to obtain it through genocide, through economic disparity, and imperialism. If you don't like immigration, in which that's what this whole ethno state is about. People fear, brown people coming into the countries, and they can't be racist to them. The issue is that economy is structured. Imperialism. That's the whole broad structure of it. You don't want to fight your fellow man. You have the same interest. You want to nip that in the bud.
All right. Where was I? Does anyone else want to voice their opinion? Or is everyone to make a closing statement? Has everyone?
I think we're all done. Yeah, we're just. You can make a statement.
Yeah. Oh yeah, mine. What I wanted to say. Firstly, I think that if the immigrant is highly educated and has or is very rich, I think that that's an improvement to the country, and they're going to assimilate themselves perfectly fine into the environment, right? On the other hand, if they're low income, or they're a refugee or claiming to be a refugee, I don't think that's, and especially on like when there's like especially with mass immigration, like having a few hundred people coming into your country a year is not a bad thing, even maybe a few thousand. But when you're moving entire populations from other countries into your country, I don't think that's a good thing. That is gonna change the demographic, and also a lot of times those people are going to end up going into a certain community, and they're going to be around their own people. So it's almost sort of like you're bringing a part of that country into your country, and whatever social issues that they had there, right? Whatever belief systems that they had there that caused issue there, you're only bringing it into yours. You're not gonna move them. They're not gonna fucking what do you call? Sorry for my French. They're not going to. They do end up being into, what is it called again? Sort of concentrated communities anyway. And like I said before, whatever issues that they had in their country sort of follow them. If you notice in like certain Latin communities, there's a lot of gang violence, a lot of cartel activity, and the same thing in with some Asian communities too. You see that, not as much because there's a lot of wealthy immigrants when it comes to those. But yeah.
Okay, I just want to make one last
Before-
point.
before-
Hang on.
Can I ask a question real quick, though?
Wait. So this whole meme about, like, I do agree that in general it's probably better to get a skilled person, but at the same time, if you look at places like Melbourne, Sydney, I think Seattle to a large extent, like these wealthy cities, they're overrun by Chinese because we're just they're basically buying their citizenship. So I just don't like that. We have like an overlord at that point. So I do think it's preferable than having like someone coming with nothing. But at the same time, why do we want to bring in a population that outcompetes us and then rules over us economically?
I'm saying compared to one another, I think that someone who has something to offer, while they may buy up the property and sell it for more, or rent it out for more, or bring up the taxes or whatever, they are bringing an improvement to your environment. And also because they have more money, they probably have more education. They won't be bringing.
Quick question: I thought we were done with the closing statements. Are we still giving points here?
Yeah,
I
I guess
don't
we
think
should
we're-
wrap it up. There's
Yeah,
a lot
we
to cover
should.
though. Yeah, we should.
Yeah, we
Let's
should
wrap
close
it
it.
up.
Getting
Maybe
extra
we can
points
do it
in,
again
so.
in a couple months and go again.
We'll do it
because,
again. This was
Yeah, there
fun.
was
Yeah.
a lot. Yeah.
Actually, one thing,
Anyway,
I just.
Go
I'm
ahead,
sorry.
Sammy.
No,
No,
it's just we're
wait,
kind of
wait.
getting wrapped
No more
on
points, please,
immigration.
'cause-
And I'm just saying we're getting wrapped up on immigration, but you can still have immigration in an ethno state.
I
It's just
agree. I
rather
agree.
mass immigration. So I just want to say that the point that I'm bringing is that there's more net negatives to mass illegal immigration. It's not that we're not anti-immigration here at all. So this is kind of moving away from the argument. And
I
we're
think we
just
should all get
declare,
1 point now since we already had.
yeah.
All right, everyone.
Yeah.
I appreciate you all for
Wait,
coming.
can we all get 1 more point? Because you guys got you
Okay,
three got one
Xavier, you
session
can finish
after me,
off.
I think.
Go.
And then Sun got after me. So I guess we left. No, never mind. So I guess it's fine if you want to take immigrants from different places. I think it's cool. Like the Western countries, which are in a lot of regards the most successful countries, a lot of us have lots of immigration from different countries. I think it kind of shows like, you know what, our politicians and people who dictate immigration have already kind of seen that immigration is not a huge horrible thing. I think if you're looking at it from the status of like, hey, my culture is changing, then this kind of sucks. But it's like I at the end of the day, I don't think we should be so focused on skin color or culture. More like, what do these people have to offer to our country, right? Like, an illegal immigrants is a totally different argument. I mean, that's a kind of a uniquely American problem because we have a huge unstable country to our south. But for other countries, regular immigration is totally fine. I think it's okay. If you are very interested in demographics or skin color or culture, then I mean, I guess it's a problem that's pertinent to mainly you, but politicians have already seen that, hey, you know what, immigration in different regards is pretty good, and might as well let it happen.
All right, dude, let's wrap this up now and we can continue maybe in the YouTube comments. Until next time, peace.